Hey everybody, my name is Ocean and I'm going to walk us through a 45-minute stretch class for the entire body. I'm just going to start standing and do some arm circles, stretching out to the sides and up, and then pulling straight back down again. Now feet are hip distance apart, and we're reaching from the feet all the way through to the fingertips, and we're looking for mobility in the shoulders, and comparing the right side with the left side. Now I'm just going to turn sideways, but you don't have to. As we bring the arms up, let's try to add a back bend without pinching the low back. On the inhale, the arms stretch upward as we root downward through the feet, adding a little back extension and then pulling straight down again. Let's do that 2 more times. Inhale for the back bend, opening up the front body, and exhaling, closing it a little bit. One more, let's leave the arms reaching up towards the ceiling and then grab the right wrist. Lift the right shoulder off the rib cage and let's take a side bend, stretching down the whole side of the body and then coming out of it a little bit. Try not to rotate, pull on the arm and side bend, stretching side waist and then up. Now lift the pelvic floor a little bit so that you protect the low back. Side bend, root down through the feet and then up, and we'll do one more. Pull on the wrist, stretch, and then maybe bump out the hip for a little bit more of a stretch, and it might go down the IT band. And breathe into that as you tighten your low abs. For 3, 2, really nice. Keep reaching, keep stretching. 1, and then rise up, lifting the pelvic floor and lifting you, and then sweep the arms out to the sides, but get taller as you go. Arm circles, 3 of them. Breath in. Add extension from the rib cage if you like, and breath out. 3. Inhale up and extend without pinching the low back, and then release out of it for 2. Be nice and tall, nice and long, right from the ankles to the pubic bone, and the pubic bone all the way up to the sternum. 1, the sternum is the breastbone right here. Now circle the arms out, root down through the feet, pick up that left wrist, shoulder comes off rib cage, and side bend. Lift the pelvic floor so that you don't pinch the low back, and then come out of it a little bit. And then repeat, we have 3 more. Side bend on the exhale, and then rise up on the inhale, just a little, not all the way. Now as we go into the side bend, try not to rotate the shoulder or armpit forward. Okay, so we're staying as if a piece of bread in a toaster. This is the first. Push on the wrist, maybe bump out the hip, root down through the feet, reach out through the crown, and lift the pelvic floor. 2, 1, and then rise up, reach up, stretch up, let the hands come apart, and then sweep them out to the sides and down. Whoa, nice. Okay, this time lift the toes as you circle your arms. So toes come up, arms circle, and then exhale, release the toes and release the arms. Just 2 more like that. Stretch up, reaching up through the hips, through the arms, and then release. Okay, 1 more. Add a back bend this time, up, open the front line of the body, try not to pinch or dump into the low back. And then as we exhale, let's bring the hands to opposite hips. So right hand to left hip to right hip, take a deep breath in. Now let's take the left arm and stretch it out to the side. As you exhale, push your hip into your fingertips so that the hip doesn't turn, but the ribs turn. So rotate into the left side body and then return to center. So as I rotate, I'm rotating my rib cage, but I'm not rotating the pelvis. So it becomes a spinal rotation and not a hip rotation. We have 4 of them, so there's 2 more. And the fingers on the hip helps to guide the hip towards square. Otherwise, you might find that it tries to come with the wrist and the arm. Okay, this is the farthest one yet. Lift the toes, see if you can reach back a little bit farther, and then come back and touch the hip. Take a deep breath in. Now as we exhale, we're going to round the back. I'm just going to turn to the side again. We're going to round the back, curl the tailbone under, and then release. This should stretch your low back. Curl the tailbone under, draw the ribs towards the pelvis, and then release. Let's do that 2 more times. So I'm lifting the pelvic floor, I'm pushing the low back towards the wall behind and tucking the sits bones under. And then release releasing it all to come up to a nice standing neutral. And one more. Pelvic floor lift, low back stretch, ribs down. And now let's just stay here and take 3 deep breaths. Now it's kind of a weird posture, but some people actually live like this. You'll actually see people walking around like this. Not ideal, but it is a nice stretch in the low back. Now if you're really tight, you'll actually feel it as a stretch, but some of us won't feel the stretch at all. But believe me, you are pulling your pelvis away from your spine, so there is some benefit happening, whether you can feel it as a stretch or not. And then let's lengthen up on the inhale, and then we'll take the twist to the left. So you're pushing your hip into your fingertips as you send your right arm out to the side, and then twist to the right while you push your hip to your left. And then return to square. That's 1 of 4. Lengthen and rotate, spiraling upward like a barbershop pole. And then return to center. And lengthen and twist. Notice how far you can go. Keep pushing your hip into your fingertips. And return to center. And this is the last one. Lengthen, spiral, and rotate. Let's see if you can go a little bit further. Push your hip a little bit more forward and twist a little bit more. And then come back to center, grab your opposite hip, take a deep breath in, and then curl the tailbone under again. So tuck the tailbone under, tuck the sits bones under, stretch the low back, drop the chest and the ribs and the gaze. And then come out. 4. This is kind of a subtle move, right? You're curling the tailbone under. The goal is to stretch the low back. And then out for 3. Maybe a little bend of the knees will help get you into a deeper curve in the low back. And then as you straighten the legs, we lift up through the pelvis, the ribs, the shoulders, and the neck. 2, and the head, of course. And then soft bend in the knees, curl the tailbone under, elbows maybe a little bit forward, ribs back, chest forward and down, and breathe. See if you can force the breath into the back as opposed to the front. 2 more breaths, nice deep round curve in the back. And 1 more. And then on the inhale, lengthen up. Let's go into that arm circle again. Inhale, sweep out to the sides and up. Let's go right into a side bend. Lift the right wrist, take a side bend. Maybe it's smoother than the first one. Maybe we can bump the hip out and go a little bit farther. And then let's rise up on the inhale for the back bend. Don't pinch, just open up. And then circle the hands down and around. Arm circle, inhale up. Let's grab that second wrist, lift the shoulder up off of the rib cage. Take your side bend as you reach up and over, and then add that hip bump out to the side. Maybe we go a little bit deeper, there's no rotation. 1, and then rise up, perhaps the back bend, lift the pelvis, maybe just reach up towards the ceiling or reach back towards the wall behind you. And now let's go into a thigh stretch, a back of the thigh stretch. So we're going from the back bend, stick your butt out and bend the knees a little bit, and then we're coming into a forward fold. So we're gonna reach down towards the floor. Okay, and then drop the head. Now, of course, you might have noticed I have a chair there. You could put your hands on the chair if you preferred it. If you have blocks or a book, you can put your hands on that. Or you can just put your elbows on your knee and just let your head dangle down. So the knees are bent and the elbows are on them. And you might start to feel your back stretch. And you might even be in a hamstring stretch. We're going to focus on the hamstrings. So let's bring the hands to the shins and then work towards straightening the legs and then bending the knees again. So as we straighten the legs, the sits bones push backward and upward. So it's the bony part of the bum. And then we bend the knees and the sits bones aim outward and possibly slightly downward. All right, sits bones push out as the legs straighten and then they push up, which tips the crown of the head down. And then as we bend the knees, the bum aims towards the wall behind you and possibly down towards the floor. Let's do this 3 more times. Straighten the legs, but don't forget, aim the sits bones up and the crown of the head down. And then bend the knees, and maybe you rest your elbows on your knees and get your head above your heart. If you have high or low blood pressure, you might want to change where your head is if you're getting dizzy. So, head might not want to be beneath the heart when you come into the forward fold, so you might keep your head up as much as you can and work on lifting the sits bones. But if you don't mind having your head beneath your heart, you might dangle your head down as low as you can, but you're still going to work on lifting your sits bones. So you want to pick up the bum and anchor through the knees for 3. Now you could grab opposite elbows or still have your elbows on your knees, entirely up to you. But if you wanted to reach towards the floor, you could do that too, for 2. And 1, okay, let's drop down to the hands and the knees. So I'm going to bend the knees enough that I can come onto the hands, and then I can come onto the knees. And now we're onto the floor. Oh, okay, great. We're going to go into a chest stretch. So I'm going to start to walk the feet away from the hands. And as I do that, I'm going to slide the hands slightly forward, and then start to lower the chest down in through the arms, and the forehead goes towards the floor. So the pelvis is directly over the knees. It's not forward of the knees, that's actually a lot of pressure in the upper body, and it's not back unless you need it to be. Ideally, it would be over the hips. Now if that was intense, then you would go back. But if you can keep the hips over the knees, then you'd stay right here and try to melt your heart down towards the floor and breathe. So you might be aware of your shoulder blade muscles. They shouldn't be hurting, but you should notice them. And you might be aware of your chest muscles, which shouldn't be hurting, but they should feel like they're stretching. Now, if you lifted your elbows off the floor, it would make both sets of muscles more intense. Let's see if we can stay here for 3 more breaths. Now, if you didn't want to be on the floor, of course you wouldn't have to be. You could use the back of your chair. Maybe I should have mentioned that first. You could also use the seat of your chair or a table or a counter. It really doesn't matter. Just choose something that feels like it's giving you nice shoulder stabilization and a nice chest stretch. But if you don't mind using the floor, great, because we're going to be on it soon. 2. And 1. Okay, now we're just going to sit back towards the heels, but not necessarily on them, and then pull your elbows underneath of the shoulders. Now from here, the elbows are under the shoulders, and the knees are still under the hips. If we tuck the tailbone under here, does that give you a really nice low back stretch? And then release it. So let's just do that a couple of times. Exhale to curl the tailbone under and push your low back up towards the ceiling, and then release that. Now, of course, if you're using the chair, you could still be using the chair. You'd simply be on your forearms on the chair. Either way, there should be a stretch in your low back from the pelvis literally to the rib cage. Not any farther than that. So whichever position feels appropriate for you. Let's do 3 more of these. Now I feel a little bit more of a low back stretch when my upper body is lower than I do when it's higher, but you're going to choose the one that feels appropriate for you right now. Okay, now from this low back stretch, we're going to go into a figure 4 stretch. So I'll give you options. If you can do a pigeon if you're used to yoga. So this would be option 1, would be to come into a pigeon shape. If you don't like that option, you could do a figure 4, but wait, there's another option. You could have your foot on the floor or floating. If you wanted to sit in a chair, you could sit in the chair and do the figure 4 stretch, as long as you're feeling a stretch in your hip. So let's go ahead and try that now. We're going to go into a figure 4 stretch or a hip opener that feels appropriate for you. And we're going to stay here for a minute. So find one that feels good for your body, that feels like it's going to help and not hinder, and breathe. Now if you happen to choose pigeon stretch, you might know that there are a couple of other options for pigeon, and I hope you stayed up for the first few moments so that after that you had other options to go into. So you could come down onto your forearms if you like. Some people like to go right out. I'm not sure where you are, but you choose the one that feels appropriate for you right now without judgment. Just find the one that feels like it will help and not hinder. We just have another 10 seconds here. And just think of really good posture. And then we'll just gently make our way out of this. So whatever you're in, whether you're in your figure four, if you're lying on your back, just hug both knees into your chest. If you're in the pigeon, just make your way out slowly, and we're on the hands and knees. So you're in something symmetrical. All right, so if you're on your back, pull your knees in and then release. If you're sitting in the chair, you can fold over your legs. If you're on your hands and knees, just follow along with what I'm doing, shifting forward and back. Okay, now just to demonstrate, if you happen to be sitting in the chair for your figure four stretch, you've let it go, you're hinging forward and coming over the legs and dropping the weight of the head. So it's symmetrical, and that's the reason why we're here. For 3. Now in the chair stretch, you might feel your back stretching and a nice deep breath going into the back of your rib cage. 1, all right, now figure four on the other side or pigeon on the other side, entirely up to you. Choose the second leg and choose the one that feels right. Now, of course, one side is very different from the other. So even if you could get pigeon on the first side, that doesn't mean that the second side appreciates it. So you can try it, and then if it says, I don't really like this, then listen to what your hip and knee or foot have to say about it and accommodate that. So you might choose the figure four stretch in the chair or on your back on this side. You still have another 28 seconds here. I'll just demonstrate again what that figure four stretch would look like. You could cross the ankle over your knee, you could pick your other leg up off the floor. If you're in the figure four, make sure you're pushing your knee and your hip away from your ribs and your shoulder. And that is going to intensify the stretch for you. For 3. Now, of course, if you're in the pigeon, hopefully you've made your way down already. 2. And 1. All right, so slowly let's make our way out of this stretch, either in the chair, on the floor, or in the pigeon, and then do something that's symmetrical, so even on the right and left sides of the body. So if you're sitting in your chair, you're flexed over your legs, hands and head dangling towards the floor. Or if you're in your figure four stretch on your back, you're just hugging your knees into your chest, which would feel really nice. All right, so from this, we're actually going to transition to a hamstring stretch. So if you're sitting in your chair, you can take your right leg and extend it out, okay? You can also do this standing or sitting on the mat. So if you happen to be on your mat, let's just lay down. Now, you can do it sitting and hinging over the leg, or you can do it lying down on the ground and reaching the leg up towards the ceiling. Or you can do it sitting in the chair with that right leg outstretched and then hinging over the leg. Now, of course, if you don't have the chair, then you can have the right leg in front of the left. This is the one that I'm going to demonstrate for you today. And then we hinge at the hips and fold over the leg. Now your weight will be on the bent leg. So we have this for a minute. It really doesn't matter which one you chose, but it does matter that it's good for your back. So if you didn't want to do the one standing, then I would sit. If you don't want to be sitting in the chair, then maybe sit on the ground. If you don't want to sit on the ground, then maybe lay on the ground. Laying on the ground is the safest hamstring stretch to do. So this one protects the neck and it protects the shoulders and the low back. So again, you're choosing the one that feels the best. For 3. 2. Okay, hug that knee into the chest or release that stretch in whatever way feels right for you. And then we will switch sides. So second leg goes out, butt goes back, and you're hinged over. And then just breathe. Now you can rest in whatever way you want to rest, but if you start to get dizzy and you're in a forward fold, lift your head above your heart. Now we just did one leg and now we're doing the other leg. Did you notice if one side is tighter than the other? It's very interesting to notice these little things. We just have another 15 seconds here. Of course, if you're getting dizzy, start to lift your head up and above your heart. For the hamstring stretch, we're trying to take the sits bone away from the shin bone. So even if you're lifting your head up, if you lift your sits bone with it, it will still provide a stretch for you. 3, 2 and 1, and then come out of that. All right. So we're gonna make our way to standing. So if you happen to be on your back, I'm sorry, come on up. We're gonna do a calf stretch now. So you can do the calf stretch with nothing, with just your hips. You can use your chair or you can use the wall. But I'm gonna use just the chair because it's right here. I'm just gonna step the one foot behind the other, and then I'm gonna bend the front knee. And as I bend the front knee, I'm gonna push into the back heel. And pushing into the back heel is the thing that gives me the calf stretch. And I can feel it close to the back of my knee. So if you had the wall, you would just push your hands into the wall and it would push you back into your back foot and it would intensify the stretch in your back calf for you. If you don't have anything at all, then you just have your hands on your hips and you're pushing with your front foot into your back heel. Just have another 8 seconds here and just enjoy. So from here, I'm actually going to bend the back knee, but keep the heel pressing into the floor, and then you'll feel the stretch go down towards the Achilles tendon and heel itself. So it's still a calf muscle, but it's deeper than the last one that we did. Now, if this is hurting in any way at all, well, we don't want to feel pain, but we do want to feel stretch. So you could come in and out of it. So you might shift a little bit forward and back. If you're tight in the ankle at all, you might notice it here as if you're stuck or hitting a wall. But what I wouldn't want you to feel is pain. So moving in and out of stretch, but not in and out of pain. That being said, if you had an injury, you might be hurting, but make sure it's not a sharp shooting pain that feels like it's too much. It should feel like it's a benefit, whatever you're doing for yourself. All right, now let's just sit with it. And keep pushing the heel down towards the floor and notice the right and left sides of your Achilles tendon. It's curious, is one side tighter than the other? 3, 2, all right, come out of that. You can put your hands on the wall or on the chair and then step in. Take a few breaths. Notice one side compared to the other. And then just to test it, let's do a forward fold. So hands to your hips. And then we're going to stick the butt out and then fold down towards the floor. And as you do that, just notice, is one side tighter than the other? Reach your hands down towards the floor. Did you touch the floor more with the calf that you stretched than the calf that you didn't? So you might have noticed that stretching the calf actually gave you more room in your hamstrings and more room on that side of your spine. So valuable to do that on the other side. Bend knees and roll yourself up. And then let's do that second side. So find something, whether you're using your hips or a chair or the wall, one foot is in behind the other, but you can press your heel into the floor, and then let's bend that front knee. So the more I bend the front knee, the more I press my back heel down. Ideally, your foot would be parallel or straight, so try not to out-toe it if possible. If you're using the wall, you're square to it. So your hips and your ribs and your shoulders are square to the wall as we bend strongly into the front knee and push strongly into that back heel. So this stretch is close to the back of the knee. These are the teardrop quads that you see. If you ever see anybody that has really nice calves, this is the muscle that we're stretching. And just breathe into that stretch sensation. Just have another 20 seconds here. See if you can soften around the shoulders and the neck and the jaw. Okay, so if this muscle is the teardrop, then there's a muscle underneath of that muscle, and it leads right down to the Achilles tendon. So let's bend the back knee, but while we still push the heel into the floor. And now that stretch goes more towards the ankle side of the calf. So 2 different muscles, but they both lead into the Achilles tendon, so we can feel the stretch through the Achilles tendon. And keep squaring the pelvis, keep sending the front shin forward as you push the back shin backward. And breathe into that. Now, of course, you don't have to linger in that stretch. Maybe, like we did on the other side, we bend and straighten-ish that back leg. And that will bring you in and out of a stretch sensation. Is your Achilles tendon still straight? Did you ever twist an ankle here? Is it noticeable? Let's leave that back knee bent and press into the heel just a little bit more and breathe. 2 and 1. Excellent. Let's come out of that stretch just very gently and very compassionately. And then just have a moment standing on your feet. Feel your footprint on the floor. And then bring your hands to your hips, and maybe we'll try that forward fold again and see if now both legs are a little bit more even. So we come into the forward fold, we're reaching down towards the floor. Did we get closer to the floor this time with the left hand? Are we closer to the leg this time on the left side? Maybe there's a difference there, which would be nice. Okay, and then bend the knees and let's roll up again. Now the roll up should help loosen up the spine and add for articulation of the vertebrae. And articulation, it just means we're coming up one vertebrae at a time. Okay, now let's make a fist and throw it away. So we use our hands all day, every day, but we never really take care of them. So this is working on flexion and extension in the hands for 3. 2, might seem a little bit silly, but it's worth it. 1, now make a nice light fist and circle the wrists. So now we're working on wrist mobility. We'll do 4 times in one direction and then 4 times in the other direction, and notice the difference. Now, of course, if you wanted to sit, you could. Okay, now we're gonna open up the hands and make those circles and see how that feels different. 3, 2, 1, and then reverse that circle. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, now reach through the palms and push the palms out towards the wall in front of you. And now let's take the hands behind us, opening up the chest muscles and squeezing the shoulder blades to narrow. And then take the hands forward. I'm just going to turn sideways so you can see the shoulder blades go round. So we're stretching the shoulder girdle and neck. And then open up the arms, spread the collarbones and the chest. So it's a chest stretch. And then we're opposing that with a shoulder blade stretch and tucking in the chin. That's 2 of 4. Stretch open from the center of your body out through your pinky fingers. And then close and round the shoulders. 1 more. Press back and open up. Open up the heart. Open up through the collarbones. This time interlace your fingers and round your shoulders and drop your head and hold that. Now, in the hands, imagine that you're holding a steering wheel and that we're going to steer to our right. So, steer to the right and see how that changes through the shoulder girdle, and then return to center, and then steer to the left and see how that changes the shoulder girdle, and then come back to center. Of course, we're still rounded through the shoulder blades while we do this move. And then bring it back. It looks a little bit silly, it might feel a little bit silly, but we're definitely moving the shoulder blades, and that's stretching the muscles around the blades. And then back. Is one side tighter than the other? And then back. Okay, now let's bring the hands in, look at the fingers, and then push them forward. Now this is going to be a hand and forearm stretch. Okay, so when we interlace the fingers, we tend to interlace them the same way every time, and that's familiar and it's comfortable. But it's familiar and it's comfortable, so we have to change it. Let's bring it in. It's not a bad thing, but it's nice and it's worth it to try the other way. So whatever index finger or thumb is on top, we have to switch it. So we're going to take the hands apart and take the other index finger and thumb on top and interlace your hands that way. If you did it right, it should feel wrong. It should feel like you're holding somebody else's hand, right? All right, now push out, pull your shoulder blades apart, feel that shoulder girdle stretch, and drop your nose and breathe. Now to this one, I'm going to add a little bend of the knees and then straighten. A little bend of the knees and then straighten. And as we do that, bending the knees, do you feel that drag the stretch down to the small of your back? And then as you straighten, it goes just right back up into the shoulder blades. So we bend the knees, it goes towards the low back, and then we straighten and we're stretching the shoulder blades. Let's do this 3 more times. Now maybe you don't have a big movement. 2, maybe you're just really tight in the back muscles and you don't really feel much of anything at all. 1, but just know that the fact that you're trying is stretching. So let's hold this and take 3 breaths. Okay, now on your next Next inhale, let's lengthen up and let your hands float down, and then you can bring the hands in and then push the palms forward. Again, it might feel a little bit weird, a little bit wonky, a little bit like you're holding someone else's hand, but it's your own, I promise, and it will feel normal the more you do it. For 3, 2, let's draw the shoulders down the rib cage, and 1, and now with control of yourself, see if you can unclasp your fingers and pull apart. Now right now, squeeze the shoulder blades in really, really narrow as you pull your elbows in towards your spine, and try to keep pulling your neck back with your head. So this is opening up the collarbone and narrowing the shoulder blades, so this is just good for posture, even though it might feel a little bit weird. For 3, 2, and let your hands drop down. Okay, arm circle. All right. Now, how do the arm circles feel now compared to the first part of our class today? 2 more breaths. Now, hopefully, everybody can come to the floor. If you cannot, I'm going to show you this sitting in a chair. So if you happen to have a chair, you can sit in it and join in, even if you have a floor. We're just going to take a seat and we're going to twist and use the chair to keep the length of the spine, but not use the chair to twist you. Okay, and then we're going to come back to center. Stay there for a breath. Now, if you don't have a chair, you're sitting on the floor. And then return to center. Okay, now if you like sitting in the chair and you have it, keep it. But if you don't, and you're like, well, all I have is the floor, what do I do? Well, we can sit cross-legged and do the same thing. So let's bring the arms up and have your middle fingertips touching, and then spiral in one direction as far as you can go, just with your own waist, and then bring your hand behind your sacrum and to the knee. Now, I'm not using this to twist any further. I'm just using it to make sure I'm sitting up tall. And then look over the back shoulder. 1, very gently release the hands and return to center and stay there for a moment. Imagine your arms are like tent poles. So you're holding yourself up from the armpits to the floor. 1, and then twist in the other direction, whether you're in the chair or on the floor. And then your hands hold the height of the rotation that your body was able to provide. Nice deep breaths. Try to turn the waist but not the pelvis. And then return to center and just hold center for a moment. Now from here, we're actually going to lengthen out through the legs. So if you're sitting in the chair, you can keep your legs where they are, but if you're sitting on the floor, just bring the hands down and stretch out through the legs. Okay, let's everybody take the right knee and bend it. Now, if you're sitting in your chair, you could cross your right knee over your left. If you're on the floor, you're crossing your foot over. Now we're going to go to the twist again, but we're twisting to the inner thigh. So as we inhale, lengthen up and stretch out through the arms, or if you preferred it, you can have your hands like this, with the elbows bent. And then as you exhale, spiral into your inner thigh, and then you can bring your hand to the outside of your knee and the other hand behind your back. Now, this is a spinal rotation like last time, but we're going to add a glute stretch and a hip stretch, unlike last time. So you're going to push your elbow into your arm while pushing your arm back into your elbow, and that should bring a stretch sensation to your bum. If you're on the floor and you like it, you're still there. I'm just going to demonstrate what this would look like in the chair. For 5, 4, still pushing into arm and leg, leg to arm and arm to leg. For 2, for 1, release the arms and then return to center and stay there for a moment. All right, and then uncross that leg and then just stay at center for a moment and breathe. Of course, if you're on the floor, you can stay on the floor. We're going to cross the other foot over, or you're going to cross at the knee. Choose the hand position that felt appropriate for you. And then on your exhale, rotate to your front inner thigh. Excuse me. And then let your hands go down to keep the height. All right, now once you've got your hands and your spine set up, push your arm into your leg and push your leg into your arm. And that will bring a stretch sensation to the outer hip thigh and possibly glute. For 4. And 1, let's return to center. Undo the arms, undo you, and then let the arms float down. Just sit at center for a moment. And then undo the legs. Hold. Now, if you are in a chair, we're just hinge over the legs. If you're sitting on the floor, then knees bent. We're all gonna come over the legs and just breathe. So if you're sitting in the chair, let the weight of the head drop. You'll have a really nice neck stretch. If you're sitting on the floor, you're trying to put your stomach right on your thighs and then just flexing it over the legs. So this would be more of a back stretch for sitting on the floor. In the chair, you'll have both a neck and a back stretch. Let's take 3 more breaths here. Okay. Now, there's just a few more moments left of class, so on our inhale, we're just gonna lengthen up through the spine and sit up nice and tall. Now, if you're sitting in the chair, your hands are wrapped over your knees, and they're just staying there. It's the same way as how we are sitting on the floor. So I have my fingers wrapped over my knees, and then from here, I'm actually gonna start to lean back. Now, if you're in the chair and there's a seat, a back seat on your chair, you might have to scooch forward so that you're not just bumping into the seat of your chair. So right now, if I were to let go, I'd almost fall back. So my fingers are actually gripping into the shins to keep me supported here. So if you're on the floor, you can stay there. You should feel your back muscles. If you're in your chair, you can stay there. I'm just gonna come onto the chair. You can see what it would look like. Emily, turn sideways so you can see me. All right, so you're leaning back, arms are straight, and if you were to let go, it would feel like you were gonna fall. So what this is doing is it's lengthening and strengthening the spinal muscles. So from your pelvis to the head, you want to feel a connection. So the head is attached through the spine to your pelvis. Now, as you're leaning back, you might also notice that your shoulders are holding on as well. How are they holding on? See if you can hold yourself from the bottom of your shoulder blades rather than from the top of your shoulder blades. So you want to take the tips of the shoulder blades and push them into your rib cage without flaring. For 3. Okay, you should be a little bit fatigued with that by now. So with control of yourself, pull slightly forward so you come out of the stretch and then release. All right, now if you're on the chair, you can just lean back into the chair. If you happen to have a nice clean floor though, join me on the floor. So I'm just gonna position my mat a slightly different way. So you can lie down on the floor and hug your knees into your chest and enjoy. Or you're sitting in your chair if you don't want to come to the floor. If there's room enough on your chair, you can put your heels on the chair and hug and drop your head. Either way, you're in a nice compact little ball and it should feel quite nice. Let's take 2 more breaths together here. Okay, now in the chair, we're gonna come into a quad stretch. So I'm gonna step the feet on the floor, but then I'm gonna scooch over to the side of the chair where I actually have a sits bone, which is sort of dropping off the side of the chair. Then you can slide your foot back and grab for your foot. Now I'm holding onto the chair in this way and this way, holding onto the foot. So that counterbalances me. If you're on your back, you can roll over to the side and grab your ankle and stick your pubic bone out. Either way, we're getting a nice stretch up the front of the thigh. Now, if you happen to be on the floor, try to lift your rib cage off the floor so your spine is straight and have your eyes at eye level so you're looking straight out. And to this, you could add a chest stretch by rolling your shoulder blade back. Okay, and nice deep breaths into your quad, into the front of your thigh. For 3, 2, and 1. Okay, let's roll back onto the back, either in the chair itself or on the floor, and hug both knees into your chest. So you either put your heels on the chair and drop your forehead to your knees, or you pull your knees into your chest, and you can pull your forehead to your knees here. Let's take 2 more breaths, but if you're on your back, you might find it a little bit more comfy to have your head resting. And then we'll take the quad stretch on the other side. So if you're in your chair, you're going to shimmy over to the other side of it where your sits bone is almost hanging off. And if you're on your side, or on your back, you're going to roll over to the opposite side and line up your head and neck with your ribs. Keep going, and nice deep breaths into the muscle that you're stretching. Of course, if you're on your chair, you scooched over to the other side of the chair. I'm holding on so I don't fall off, and I'm grabbing. Now you might not grab the ankle, maybe you're grabbing your pant leg or your socks or something that just gives you that little bit of leverage that is needed to feel the stretch from the knee towards the hip. So let's take 2 more breaths together here. Excellent, okay, and then just gently release that stretch onto your back or scooch over into the chair again. And then sit way back into the chair or hug your knees into your chest if you're lying on the floor. Put your feet on the chair and you can hug your knees in. Now, if this isn't comfy for you, if you're just hating it, of course we can go back to the one where we're flexed over the legs, and you could actually bring your hands in behind your calves and give your legs a little bit of a hug that way. You might feel more of a stretch through your shoulder blades. Let's take 3 more breaths here, just enjoying this moment. Okay, and then on your next inhale, let's separate the hands, and we're just going to take the feet and legs apart. So if you're on your mat, it's a happy baby pose. Okay, now if you were sitting up, then you just take your legs and feet apart and come like this. You might start to feel an opening or a stretch in your inner thighs. Okay, now if that's enough for you, keep that and push yourself back into your chair. If you'd like more, you can put your feet on the floor and hinge through so that you get that stretch in your inner thighs. If you're on the floor on your back, just bring the soles of the feet together and the knees apart and go into butterfly. Now you may notice that I did this on the chair, so you could also do butterfly on the chair if you preferred it. Okay, so those are our chair options. Keep going if you're happy with that. The floor options were, we were on our back to start. We were hugging the knees into the chest, so we went to butterfly here. I also mentioned happy baby pose. So if you're used to that, you could do happy baby pose, either grabbing the hamstrings or the knees, or the calves, or the ankles, or the feet. Either way, you're opening up your hips and your low back. Of course, if you're in happy baby, butterfly is very available from happy baby. So you can come down into the butterfly from there if you like. Let's together take 3 more breaths in whatever shape we felt was the most beneficial for us. And that might not be the most comfortable one. It's probably the more uncomfortable one. Okay, and then once you've had your 3 breaths, we're gonna rest. So if you're in your chair, sit back into your chair, put your feet on the floor in a comfortable way. If you're on your back on the floor, then we just lie on the back on the floor in Shavasana. Now this is not a waste of time. This is probably one of the more important shapes of any stretch class. Stretches are meant to change the length of our muscles. So this restores and retains the length, this shape right here. But if we just bounce back into our regular day, then the benefits won't last.
So please feel free to stay in this shape for as long or as little as the time that you have available. But if you're like me and you have another class to teach, you've got to go, or maybe you have more work to do, so you might have to go. So thank you so much for joining my stretch class today. I really appreciate it. On behalf of myself and the Homburg Center, please take care of yourself, wash your hands, and don't touch your face, and stay safe, and have a marvelous day. Thanks, everybody.